Alright, welcome everybody back to another YouTube video. Today, I am starting out a new series and I'm kind of excited for, because I've been meaning to do this for a while. I just hadn't figured out how exactly I wanted to make it look, but here we are. I am going to call the series Valorant, and essentially, it will be me kind of talking about the patch notes for the act. I plan to do these videos at the end of each act. That way I have the patch notes for the said act to look over, kind of reflect that, and really see if did the patch notes get at what they were trying to get at? Did they fix the problems they wanted to fix? Or are there still issues left to address? And kind of give my personal reflection on what I think the patch notes really did. Has the meta changed? How's the game looking? What's the game state? And just overall, my overall commentary. And so this will be over the new game mode Escalation. So, I mean, the gameplay's there for y'all to enjoy, but I'm mostly going to focus on the commentating. And we're starting off with the Raze launcher. But yes, for those of you that do not know who I am, or maybe just walked into this channel, my name is Mexx. I am a Twitch streamer, I guess, but then I do put out content here on YouTube for all of y'all to enjoy. I am a bronze, now silver player, so take from that what you will. Valorant was my first game that I've played on PC. I actually got my PC around the same time that Valorant came out, and I just overall really enjoy it, which is why I wanted to do this. I enjoy this game a lot. I want this game to be doing good, and I want to do my part to it, right? So, to begin, the patch notes. So, the act started with the first patch notes, patch notes 2.0. And there were a couple of crucial updates in this patch that we've probably gotten used to by now, but for those of you that don't remember, this was the patch notes that came with the Brim buff. So essentially, Brim had his stim beacon buffed. So essentially, before, it used to be when you threw his stim beacon out, it would take a couple of seconds for it to activate. Now it just instantly activates, and it provides all the buffs that his stim beacon provides, right? His molly was reduced slightly in price, so it's much more obtainable, especially in save rounds or initial pistol rounds. So it's another resource for the team to use. Oh, they were all just waiting for me there. His sky smokes, probably the biggest buff that Brim got. So they now deployed in a bigger area and they lasted a lot longer. So if you've noticed, Brim smokes actually last quite a while. And I think that's probably his biggest buff. To an extent that, like, sometimes you feel like those smokes have lasted too long. But the main reason that Brim got buffed was because a lot of people were preferring Omen at the time. At the beginning of this act, Omen was a really big favorite. People were using Brim over Omen. I mean, Omen over Brim. And there's really no talk about using Brim. And so this buff attempted to get at that problem, which I think it did a pretty good job at doing so, because you do see a lot more Brims running around. But as you'll kind of get an idea later on as we go further into the patch notes, Omen actually lost quite a lot from from these couple of patch notes. So then, along this buff for Brim, Omen gets a nerf. His flash goes up to 400, which now makes it much more of a riskier decision to make, especially in starting pistol rounds. Do you go for a pistol, or do you go for the flash? And oftentimes people will go for flash, but it really limits the playstyle of Omen. Omen would eventually get even more limited as the patch notes went on, but I concur. This was also the patch where the classic supposedly got nerfed. It did definitely get nerfed, but I think there's definitely still space for it to get even further nerfed, which maybe future patch notes have. So the nerf was that the right click, which is the shotgun style that a lot of people refer to, it got nerfed in terms of the jumping error, because a lot of people would jump right click with the classic. And that was really popular at the time. So they increased that jumping error to make it less consistent. And they increased how fast you could spam the classic, which was a very spammy gun at the time. I do agree that the spam definitely has not been something that's prevalent. I don't really see it anymore as much as I used to. But the right click, as a right click user, I definitely don't think it got banned. I mean, it got nerfed as much as it should have. I've definitely gotten my share of right clicks that are a little bit like skeptical. Like, how did I get those right clicks? So I would not be surprised whatsoever if they do indeed end up going for another nerf. Oof. Rank system also got the big change where you could now see how much rank rating you were getting, which was a huge buff to the rank system, in my opinion. It made things a lot easier for people to rank up, but also kind of get an idea of how they were doing. I know I had a couple friends that were personally struggling to understand how they would kept winning games but weren't ranking up, and so this just kind of gave a more visual representation of how people were either staying in their rank, leveling up, or decreasing in rank. So that was basically it for the first patch notes, patch notes 2.0. Then we get into patch notes 2.01, which is actually pretty small, but did come to a nerf to one of my personal favorite agents. So Jet, this was the nerf that Jet got, the smoke nerf, where essentially her smokes now lasted significantly less time. And so you couldn't really use them as much for, well, I guess as you would typically as smoke, right? You could use the smoke to get away from a situation, but you couldn't use the smoke as much anymore to actually push into an area and covering yourself. This was also a big patch note, though, because Split got the revamp in this patch notes. As we all know, Split used to be a very defensively oriented map, and a lot of people hated that about this map. Of course, just waiting around the corner. A lot of people did indeed hate, that map for that reason. Alright, I just had to get it going, huh? But Split got a huge revamp that basically made it more of a balanced map, which I definitely do think was the right move. Places like B main that used to be very easy to contest got a larger area. Let's see what else. A Heaven got a huge change in that it was a lot easier to push up on and a lot harder to defend, which made easier a little bit more viable. So yeah, Split revamp, Jet smoke nerf. That was patch notes 2.01. So those were the first two patch notes. Again, the first one was really the bigger one. The second one that followed was more so aimed at Split, which again, I think was a very much needed change. It kind of made Split less annoying to deal with. And I know for me personally, it really threw away the narrative of Split being a very defensively oriented map. So then we get into patch notes 2.02. Patch notes 2.02 included the rifle movement accuracy update. So essentially, this was the one that was aimed at run and gun, which a lot of people at the time were using rifles such as Phantom, which Phantom nowadays you can still kind of use. But the Vandal especially, and the Bulldog, were just being used as run and gun weapons, which was never really the intention for these rifles. And so what this update did was it increased the error for running, crouching, and jumping for these three rifles, and basically reduced the consistency that you could get guns while running and gunning. I think it was a step in the right direction, but I've definitely still seen a couple of kills from people running gunning, and I think there's definitely another nerf being thought out, because it definitely didn't get at what the developers wanted, and I think this is probably the first update that didn't really it definitely made an impact. Don't get me wrong, it definitely made an impact, but I think the developers kind of threw this one out just to get an idea of how much they would or wouldn't need to update further. So that was the rifle revamp. Then we have the comp update, where it kind of gave it, at the time when comp first came, when the season first started, comp was in a weird place because a lot of people were being underplaced in their ranks. You had a lot of people from gold and diamond getting placed in silver even, and a lot of people were not happy with that. And so what Valorant basically did with this one was state that they were going to make it a lot easier for people to get back to the ranks that they were supposed to get on. That there had been some error on their part that was labeling people incorrectly. And so they created a system where if you were to pop off in your games, you would get substantially more rank rating than your team. You would be looking at like plus 40 points in terms of rank rating, which would greatly help you in getting back to, the rank that you belonged in. And they also made a change to Diamond 3 where it was capped at duos. Or is that Diamond 3 or Plat 3? Diamond 3 started getting capped at duos, so essentially once you got to Diamond 3, you're no longer allowed to commit with the full squad. You have to go into duos, and this kind of made it more of a preparation to plat ranks, where you're no longer able to squad up. It all has to be solo or duo queue. And obviously, me being a silver player, I haven't had to deal with that yet. I have not made it up that far. So if you are a diamond or plat player, let me know what you think of those changes in the comments. Do you think this was something good on Valorant's part? Have you enjoyed your games further, or has this made this even more difficult? Continuing on with the patch, I think that was it for 2.02. So then we get to 2.03, and this is the most recent patch notes. So this is probably the one that people have the most experience with. 2.03 is the most recent patch notes, and it is the patch that essentially buffed and debuffed Reyna. So they reduced the amount of orbs you can get with Reyna to use your Devour and Dismiss. They reduced them from 4 to 2. So now you only have 2 opportunities during a round to essentially try to make a move with Reyna. A lot of people were upset about this change, and I understand why. But I think in terms of the dev side, it really just allowed for a less spam oriented game. I think what a lot of people, at least in the lower ranks of ranked, and again for those diamond or plat players, if you have a different experience, let me know down below in the comments. A lot of people were spamming Reyna's abilities, and so this created for a difficult time because a lot of people could get 1v4'd if the Reyna player was somewhat efficient with their abilities. Now it really rewards more so the players that play, I guess, I don't want to say better, but more strategically with Reyna. They know when and when not to use the orbs, and thus it's better suited for better players, essentially. However, you also have the buff that they gave her, where now you don't need to be the one to get the kill to get the orb. You can get an assist, and by getting the assist, you still get the orb, so you can still Devour Dismiss. And it's honestly a good buff because it kind of places less pressure on the Reyna player to make the kill. Whereas in before, you would get pissed if like one of your teammates took the kill. Now you're just like, okay, I got the assist, so I still have the orb. I can still use it if I really want to. And it kind of, relieves that pressure from Reyna players. It makes Reyna a more viable player, in my opinion, because you don't have to be fully dependent on your own skill. But you can get some assists from your teammates and kind of assist in that. So Reyna got her nerf and buff, and then Yoru, right? So Yoru got introduced this act. I didn't really talk about him in the initial patch notes because he's kind of been... So introducing a duelist is, I don't know if it was intended, but I had heard that they were going to introduce either a Sentinel or a Controller. I don't remember which one. And then Yoru was the one that we got, and so a lot of people were confused on that aspect. And while initially people were really mad that Yoru had gotten introduced with a lot of flashes, what ended up happening was not a lot of people ended up using Yoru, and even now, Yoru's kind of a meme character. So what do I mean by a meme character? Essentially, a lot of people haven't really found out how to play Yoru. Don't get me wrong, there's some people that are like super good with Yoru and have kind of an idea of how to use his distraction and his flashes. But most people that I've played with that use Yoru have really relied more so on their flashes than anything else. Yoru's just another flash agent, and I think a lot of people were upset about this because the last thing that this game needs right now is flashes. So Yoru got a mention in this patch because the devs stated that they weren't seeing a lot of Yoru action, or at least not as much as they had expected to see. So he got some buffs for his abilities. Essentially, his teleport, his gate crash, Prior to, you would just throw the orb and hope that nobody was where you had thrown it to, and now it kind of gives you some indicators of whether there's somebody near, of somebody can see, whether somebody can see you nearby, if people can hear you, triggering the teleportation, which are good indicators, but I don't really know how much it has impacted that ability. I personally have not really used Yoru. I think I've only used Yoru once, and obviously here, but he doesn't have his abilities. So I still don't really have that much of an opinion on Yoru. I kind of hold back from using the new characters or agents when they come out, because I like focusing on the older ones, and then when people have kind of stopped spamming or like insta-locking the new agents, and that's kind of when I start giving them an opportunity to look at it and kind of understand their abilities. So his Dimensional Drift also got an update, and that's basically his ult. Prior to this update, if you used his ult, you weren't really allowed to. Essentially, it was more so recon for yourself, but while in that state, you basically didn't have a mini map. You couldn't tell, like, allies couldn't see the enemies on the mini map regardless of you looking at them. And so this kind of made his. It was very recon oriented, yes, but it also made it hard, especially if you were solo queuing, for example, and you weren't on a call with your friends. If you weren't in a stack, it's kind of hard to make use of that ability because then you have to communicate with everybody else. And if you've ever solo queued or even duo queued, you kind of know that sometimes randoms have a hard time communicating with people. I don't know what it is about Valorant. I'm sure in the higher ranks it's not much of a problem, but in the lower ranks, people just don't like communicating, and I don't understand why. But now with his new buffs to his ultimate, you have a mini map while using the ult, and you can also, if you see anybody while using the ult on your minimap, your allies will also see them, which is just useful if somebody's looking at the minimap, and does provide some good assistance. So I definitely think that buff was definitely needed. There were some minor updates for audio cues where the mollies for Brim and Phoenix are now more noticeable when you use them and when they're on the map, which does provide some good use, but really it was more of a minor update. Then we get two major updates to two guns, the Marshall and the Stinger. Up to this point, the Stinger was running rampant on ranked, and just overall, people were really liking the Stinger. And so, of course, Valorant had to go and do a little bit of a nerf. And they increased the price of the Stinger, which I will get into at the end of all of these of the observation of patch notes. But essentially, they slightly increased the Stinger by 100, which doesn't sound like much, but it is, because it puts it closer to the Spectre now, and it kind of makes you rethink of whether it's even worth buying a Stinger or a Spectre, and maybe it's better off saving with a pistol, especially on save rounds where you don't have that good of an econ. The fully auto fire rate, which a lot of people were depending on with the Stinger, was also significantly nerfed to where there's more of a firing error in terms of after a couple of shots. It's a lot quicker now to where the fire rate kicks in and there's more recoil. But they did slightly nerf it with a better increase in responding, especially when you're bursting with the Stinger. So it's not something that you see a lot of people use, especially during the brief period where the Stinger was super popular. A lot of people were just spamming full auto Stingers. But now if you burst with the Stinger, you do recover from the fire rate a lot quicker, which does provide some use to the Stinger and does make it somewhat useful. Let's see, what other update? Oh, and then we had another alt gun that was also as popular, the Frenzy. And I don't know, I've never really been a Frenzy user. I have not been a Frenzy believer, to be quite honest. I have really just stuck with the Classic and the Ghost. Those are my two go-tos when it comes to pistol rounds. If I really want a Ghost, I will buy a Ghost. But rarely do I buy a Sheriff or a Frenzy. But a lot of people were using the Frenzy, similar to the Stinger, and thus the Frenzy got a nerf. It got increased from 400 to 500, which definitely makes an impact on pistol rounds, but also provides another unintentional nerf, or maybe intentional, to an agent that I will get into really quick. But those were the nerfs. buffs and changes through the patch notes. There were a couple of changes, and I think that is a good sign. It shows that the devs are definitely keeping a lookout and are looking at the meta and what people are using to kind of make the game a little bit better, and those small changes, which, as somebody, like I said, that really enjoys Valorant, I definitely approve of. So now we get to the reflection piece. What do I think about all this? Where do I think we're at? The patch notes, etc. Again, take this with a grain of heart. This is all with a grain of what is it, salt, whatever it's called. Point being, this is my opinion. Again, I'm like a bronze silver player. If you're higher ranked than me, maybe you don't even care what I have to say. But if you're in the same rank as me, maybe you agree, disagree with me, etc. I think there were definitely some clear winners from these patch notes. Brim's updates, Brim's buffs really helped him out and overall made him a more viable agent. So I definitely think that was a good step in the right direction. It made Brim, a character that was really overshadowed by Omen, much more viable and easier to play with. Omen, by far, is the biggest loser from these patch notes. Not only did they get a nerf early on, but the updates to especially the Frenzy, really hurt it because, as you remember, at the beginning, one of the very first nerfs that Omen got was his increase in his flash to 400. When you start off your first pistol round, you have 800 creds. If you buy your flash, you don't have enough anymore to get a Frenzy, and that's huge. That means that you have to stick with the classic. So it now becomes a question of, do I buy a Frenzy or do I buy a flash? And for a lot of Omen players, that's big because a lot of them would typically buy a Paranoia and maybe get a Ghost or a Frenzy, right? And that's not possible anymore. So it's very limited towards Omen players, and I don't know if Valorant took this into account. Maybe they make some changes, maybe they don't, but I would definitely like to see some discussion over that. Apparently there's a Viper buff on the horizon, and while I have unlocked Viper more recently and have started to use her, and would definitely love to see more from her, I don't know how they can buff her. But again, they've made some minor changes that have proven to be very impactful, so maybe there is a way that they can buff Viper in a way that doesn't completely make her too over the board and they have to nerf her again, or buffs that don't really make any changes. Again, I did mention there probably is going to be some change to the classic. The right click is just still too powerful. And while I do think the update that they made for the spam of the right click was definitely noticeable, I don't know if I noticed a jump error on the classic. I'm still getting jump shots. A lot of people have gotten jump shots at me. I don't know if that's enough of an update or if it needs more. And then lastly, Icebox. If you've played at all, especially ranked in the past couple of weeks, you know that a lot of people do not like Icebox whatsoever. You either get a lot of people that just dodge completely and don't play the game, or people that just don't try during the match. The state of Icebox is complicated because it's a full map, and I think it's definitely getting the split treatment where people really don't know A, how to play the map, but B, don't really want to learn because it's annoying. It's an annoying map overall. So I definitely would not be surprised to see some Icebox changes in this next act. And last but not least, they introduced Yoru. Are they going to buff him even further? Are they going to nerf him in certain aspects? Or are they going to give him a complete overhaul, similar to what they did with Sage? I don't know. I think him being a duelist is interesting because he does have the flash. His teleport is definitely very duelist-like. But I don't know if it's really what the devs intended, right? I don't know what they intended with Yoru. He is both a hit and a miss at certain aspects. And again, I haven't personally played him. This is all based off what I have seen. So if you're a Yoru main, you like playing him, whatever the case, let me know down below in the comments. What do you think they should do with him? What direction do they head towards? But with that said, that is all for me. Let me know if you enjoyed this. This was definitely longer than I expected. I'm not sure how I will edit this all together. If I definitely want to continue this, I think I enjoyed this a lot. Maybe doing one at the halfway mark of an act and then another one at the end would be better suited. So getting the first 2 patch notes in one video and getting the second 2 patch notes in another, that might be the direction I take forward. I don't really know. Again, let me know down in the comments below what you thought about this. But With that said, my name is Mexx. Thank you all for tuning in. Hope you all enjoyed. Let me know down in the comments what you enjoyed from this video. Did you like the patch notes that they did this act? Are there some that you wish they would have done? Did you completely hate this act? Whatever it is, let me know in the comments. Drop a like, subscribe if you haven't already. Tune in for my next video. And with that said, thank you for tuning in. I'll see you for the next one. Peace out.